Hello, greetings. I hope you are all well. Welcome to Love Sciences Grade 10 with Una. Today we'll be looking to one of the topics which are so amazing. Before we start, please subscribe, hit the notification button, like the video if you like it so that you can also watch it at a later stage. So today we'll be dealing with the blood circulation through the mammalian heart. So we'll be looking through the human heart and looking at different blood vessels, looking at the different functions, looking at different valves and all the aspects of a human heart. So we'll be doing the, of course, the main one, which is the blood circulation through the mammalian heart. We'll be doing the types of circulatory systems. We'll be doing the circuits, of course, and the cardiac cycle. We'll look at those aspects in this video. Of course, you could have done this in your schools, but it's just to just to bring up some cherry on top, to make you understand more better. So now this is the structure of a human heart in a box diagram and in also a model. So now, as you can see here, you just have to know different types of chambers. Of course, we have 4 chambers. Just know the names of these chambers, know the direction of the blood flow, know different valves involved, know different functions, different vessels that are involved in the circulation of blood. Then you'll be good to know, to go and you'll know very well what, you write what is expected, on your exams. So just know different chambers, know how blood flow, the direction, of course, know valves involved and all the vessels which are also involved in the circulation. So now, blood in a human heart flows in chambers, in blood vessels, right? Of course, it flows in blood vessels. And these blood vessels which are involved, they include arteries and veins. So now let's look at arteries. Arteries are blood vessels which transport oxygen-rich, this is a key word, oxygen-rich blood, except pulmonary artery, right? We'll explain this at a later stage. Pulmonary artery transport deoxygenated blood to, you see, these 2 emphasizes the direction to the lungs, So it's pulmonary artery transport deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Yeah. So arteries are any blood vessels which takes blood away from the heart. So it's taking blood from the heart away, A for artery, A for away, from the heart. So whatever blood which is going out of the heart, it goes through an artery, So the main artery here is called the aorta, which takes blood to the rest of the blood of the body. You see, so the main function, if they ever ask you about the function of an artery functions to transport oxygen-rich blood. That's the main function, oxygen-rich or oxygenated blood, with an exception of pulmonary artery. I want you to listen very carefully, with an exception of pulmonary artery, because pulmonary artery is the only artery in a human heart or a mammalian heart which transport deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. As the word emphasizes itself, pulmonary simply means anything to do with lungs, right? So anything which has to do with lungs, it's pulmonary. You will hear at a later stage, we'll talk about pulmonary vein. We'll just go into it. So you must know that arteries, the main function of artery is not specific. I'm not specific to any artery, but the main function of artery is to transport oxygen-rich blood, of course, with an exception of pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery is the only artery which transport deoxygenated blood. Cool. The direction. Pulmonary artery transport deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Arteries are any blood vessels which takes blood away. A for artery, A for away, takes blood away from the heart. Let's look at another blood vessel, which is a vein. I'm sure you all are familiar to this one. Vein, we always talk about it, vein. So vein are blood vessels which transport deoxygenated blood or oxygen poor blood. So this one have also an exception of pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein is the only vein in human which transport oxygen-rich blood or oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart, of course. Remember that in the lungs, there's a gaseous exchange, right? So the blood will offload carbon dioxide on the lungs and load oxygen, then transport it into the heart. So it is transported through the vein, the pulmonary vein to be specific on that point. Pulmonary vein transport oxygenated blood into the heart. Veins are any blood vessels which takes blood towards the heart. Blood are any blood vessels which takes blood towards the heart. So veins, all the veins that are found in human, they are all functioning to take blood towards the heart, into the heart. All the veins or all the blood vessels which are transporting oxygen into the heart, they are veins. Then we have the main vein, which is the superior and the inferior vena cava. Those are main veins which are found in the human heart. So we also have capillaries. We have capillaries. Capillaries connect veins and arteries so that there will be an exchange of substances, including gas between blood. So for example, in the human lungs, we also have capillaries, blood capillaries, where there will be an exchange of gas between blood. There will be an exchange of gas. The blood will offload carbon dioxide and load oxygen. Not an exchange of gas. I hope it makes sense. As you can see here, it's like this. Let's say this is my hand. This is my hand. It's a vein. It's a vein. Then when it gets here, it distributes itself. And then create venules. These venules are then called capillaries. I hope it makes sense. So that we have types of circuits of on human circulation. It circulates in two types of circuits. We've got the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. We'll explain this. And all these circuits are connected by the heart. Remember, the pulmonary circuit, I told you at the beginning that anything pulmonary has something to do with the lungs. Then we've got the systemic circuit. To emphasize this in short, but in effect, the pulmonary circuit, it's when the blood flows from the heart to the lungs and back from the lungs to the heart. That's the pulmonary circuit. Anything that has something to do with lungs is called pulmonary. Or rather, anything which is having something to do with pulmonary is called, it has something to do with lungs. I hope it makes sense. Then we've got a systemic circuit. A systemic circuit, it's when blood flows from the heart to the body. From the heart to the body. And these circuits are connected by the heart, of course, as we have emphasized. So let's look at the pulmonary circuit. Pulmonary circuit, it's an interaction between the heart and the lungs. As I've told you, as you can see on the diagram here, is the body. On the upper part or on the top part of this circuit, we've got lungs and the heart. In the middle, we've got the heart there, you can see, and then on top we've got lungs. The top part, the top half of this structure, it's a pulmonary circuit because it's an interaction between the heart and the lungs. Then the bottom part of it is the heart and the body, you know. So it's called a systemic circuit, as it were. The heart will pump on the pulmonary circuit. The heart will pump deoxygenated blood into the lungs, and the lungs pumps oxygenated blood back into the heart, as we have said, you know. Let's look at at the systemic circuit. The systemic circuit is an interaction between the heart and the rest of the body cells. You know, when blood flows from the heart into the rest of the body, that's the systemic circuit. And when blood also flows from the rest of the body into the heart, that's the systemic circuit. Oxygenated blood on the systemic circuit, oxygenated blood will flow from the heart to the body cells, and deoxygenated blood will return to the heart through the vena cava. Remember, the vena cava, we said, is the main vein in a human heart or in a human body. I hope it makes sense. So let's look at the human heart, the structure of a human heart. The human heart is a four-chambered structure or a four-chambered organ, which is a center point of blood circulation. So I can say it's an organ which facilitates the movement of blood. It is made up of four chambers, namely the two atria. Is the top chamber. The two chambers are called atria or atrium in singular. Then the bottom chambers are called ventricles. And then they are divided by their direction or position. We've got the right atrium, we've got the left atrium, a right ventricle, and the left ventricle. So as you can see there on the diagram, the top chambers, they're called their atria or atrium in singular. As you can see, you know, so there are two ventricles at the bottom, right and the left ventricle. You know, you can see the difference here on the ventricles. The other one is thick wall chambered. This chamber is thick walled. We will emphasize that. The right side of a human heart receives deoxygenated blood. The one that you can see on a bluish like a color, it is dealing with deoxygenated blood, mainly from the body. So deoxygenated blood comes in from into the right part of the human heart. So now the left side of the human heart receives oxygenated blood. Of course, it will be an oxygenated blood from the lungs, as it were. So now the blood flow through the human heart. Let's just look at this blood flow through the human heart. So for you, in order to know how blood flows in the human heart, you have to know the name of chambers that are involved, into which direction the blood is flowing. It's very important. The valves that are involved, very important. The gas in the blood is very, very important. What type of gas? It's either oxygen or carbon dioxide. It's very important for you to know that part of it. So these four aspects which I've mentioned are very important, and if you master them, you'll be able to eloquently, as passionate as you were, explaining how blood flows. Let's look at this. This is the main part of the blood circulation because we're dealing with how blood is flowing. So now the deoxygenated blood, firstly, this is the first step. The deoxygenated blood will flow from the superior and the inferior vena cava into the right atrium. This is the right atrium. The top one, the top chamber, the top right chamber is the right atrium. So it will, the deoxygenated blood from the body will flow into the heart or the right atrium. Now that's the first word, right atrium. Remember, the type of blood or type of gas in the blood is deoxygenated blood. It will flow into the right atrium through the superior and the inferior vena cava, of course, right? So now, after that, the blood will flow into the right atrium, right? After blood will flow into the right atrium, okay, excuse me for that. Blood will flow from the right atrium. This is the main point. Keyword, from the right atrium into the right ventricle. Remember, the right atrium is on the top right, then the right ventricle is on the bottom right. So it will flowing downward. Then it will flow into the right ventricle through the tricuspid valve or the atrioventricular valve. It's very important to know the type of valve which is involved. Remember that the function of a valve is to prevent the backward flow of blood. Right? So now, on the right side of the heart, between the right atrium and the right ventricle, we've got the tricuspid valve. These two chambers are divided by the tricuspid valve or the atrioventricular valve. The word, as it were, atrio from the word atrium, ventricular from the word ventricle. Then we combine the word, it says atrioventricular valve, meaning is the valve which is found between the atrium and the ventricle. Cool, let's pass. From the right atrium, blood will be pumped into the pulmonary artery through the pulmonic valve or the semilunar valve, as it were. So from the right atrium, this blood, this deoxygenated blood, will have to flow to the lungs so that it can exchange blood, right? So it will flow from the right ventricle through what? Through the pulmonary artery. Remember, the blood is being taken out of the heart through the pulmonary artery. A for artery, A for away, taking blood away from the heart. So it will flow from the right ventricle through the pulmonary artery. Then this blood passes through the pulmonic valve, the word as it were, or also known as semilunar valve. So now the pulmonary artery will take blood to the lungs. In the lungs, blood will offload carbon dioxide and load oxygen, the word as it were. Remember, this blood which is flowing from the heart, it will flow through the pulmonary artery into the lungs. I told you that artery has something to do with the lungs. Into the lungs, then in the lungs it will take out oxygen or offload oxygen, and then it takes in or load carbon dioxide, right? It will take out carbon dioxide or offload carbon dioxide, then it will load or takes in oxygen. From there, oxygenated blood from the lungs. Remember, it has offloaded carbon dioxide, it has loaded oxygen. Then the blood becomes oxygenated, right? So the oxygenated blood from the lungs will flow into the left atrium via the pulmonary vein. You get it? So from the lungs, the blood will flow into the left atrium, right? The other side, the other part of the chamber, other part of the human heart, the left part of it, left atrium via the pulmonary vein. So now that oxygenated blood from the lungs, it will be transported through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium, as it were. From the left atrium, blood will flow into the left ventricle through the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. It's very important. It's very important. So now, the valve which is found between the left atrium and the left ventricle is called the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve or the atrioventricular valve. You can name those, So it's very important to know the valve which is involved. So from the left ventricle, the blood will flow into the aorta. Remember, the left, I wish I had, yes, this is it. Okay, let me just use this one. From the left ventricle, the blood will flow on the right ventricle. You can see those two blood vessels on top. Then the blood will flow into the left atrium, then also flows down to the left ventricle. You can see the walls of the left ventricle. The walls of left ventricle are so thick They are so thick that the pumping pressure will be high. I wish I can see. I can show you here. The pumping pressure here will be high. You can see here, the pumping pressure will be high, hence the walls are so thick. So now we need that pumping pressure because of this left ventricle is pumping blood to the rest of the body. Is pumping blood to the rest of the body. The aorta needs to take blood to the rest of the body, of course. I hope it makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. So now, as it were, blood from the left ventricle will flow into the aorta through the aortic valve or the semilunar valves, which will be taken into the rest of the body. Then deoxygenated blood from the rest of the body will return into the heart through the superior and the inferior vena cava. As we explained, it's a circulation, right? The circulation, you have to know that. This is the diagram which can show you very well how it goes. You can see here the blood will start. The blood will start through on the right ventricle. The superior and the inferior vena cava. Blood will be taken into the right ventricle. Right atrium through the superior and the inferior vena cava. Then it moves through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Then from the right ventricle through the semilunar valve, it will flow into the lungs through the pulmonary artery, of course. Then it will flow through the from the lungs. It will be taken through oxygenated blood will be taken through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. So from the left atrium, blood will flow into the left ventricle through the bicuspid or mitral or atrioventricular valve. Then from there, the blood from the left ventricle will flow here through the semilunar valve or the aortic valve into the aorta, then to the body, then back. I hope it makes sense. So this is the structure of the heart, which you should know by heart, I guess. Know all the parts which are involved. Know all the blood vessels. Know all the chambers. Just know everything, every aspect of the heart. Then we have the types of the circulatory system. We've got an open and closed circulatory system. So now, humans have a closed circulatory system because of the blood, blood is flowing inside the closed or inside the vessels or the blood vessels. You can just look at the bottom diagram here, which is in orange color. It's a type of a circulatory system, of a closed circulatory system. Let's deal with an open. Open circulatory system does not have blood. Okay, open circulatory system does not have blood by heart pumps. Okay, it does not have blood. On open circulatory system, it does not use blood. The blood, the substance which is flowing is not blood, rather it's a hemolymph or the interstitial fluid, into the sinuses through blood vessels. I hope you get it. It does not use blood. Just like from or insects or in grasshoppers, they don't have blood. It have a hemolymph or interstitial fluid. In closed circulatory system, blood does not leave blood vessels. As you can see here in orange, blood is always flowing inside a blood vessel. Now let's look at the cardiac cycle. The cardiac cycle refers to the construction and the relaxation of the heart in a rhythmic cycle. Remember that construction means the blood vessels rather are becoming smaller. Then the relaxation is when they are widening or opening up. So now that creates a rhythmic cycle. Okay, the construction is also referred as a systole. The relaxation is also referred as a diastole. I hope it makes sense. Ladies and gentlemen. Now we have came to the end of our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and also remember to subscribe and hit a like button so that and hit a notification button rather, so that you can receive notifications when we upload the new video. I hope you enjoyed, ladies and gentlemen. We have came into the end of our presentation. It's your boy Una here, and see you next time.